Utility service providers in the country are predicting hard times for consumers as the PRC fails to implement the utility hike for the third quarter of the year and instead settle on that of the second quarter as far as the automatic adjustment formula is concerned. From July this year, consumers will pay 12.1% more for electricity and 6.1% for water. But where does that put the PRC? As many argue, it has failed to stick to the automatic adjustment formula.
The Public Utilities Regulatory Commission, after deliberations on implementation of the third quarter automatic adjustment formula, has arrived at an adjustment figure of 31.56% for electricity and 14.30% for water. However, the Commission has decided not to pass on the current increase.
Well, this is today's big story. My name is Prince Minka, and of course, today's big story is brought to you by Nationwide PVC, fabricators and suppliers of high-grade UPVC doors and windows. Now, the Public Utilities Regulatory Commission has announced a 6.1% increase in water tariff and 12% in the tariff for electricity. The hike is expected to take effect from July 1, 2014. Director of Public Affairs at the PRC, Nanaya Jantwa, earlier on told Joy News an initial 31% hike in electricity and 14% hike in water had been agreed at the management level, but said the proposals was forwarded to the board of the commission for approval. Well, after a crunch meeting, the board members insisted that the second quarter proposal, which is 6.1%, and that's for water and 12% for electricity, was held abeyance as a result of the continued load shedding crisis, and that should rather take effect instead of the third quarter proposal brought by management. Now, it could be recalled that the PRC failed to adjust tariffs in the second quarter, which coincided with a severe load shedding exercise. And the commission therefore decided to suspend the increment, then pondering over the proposed third quarter increment. And the board concluded that instead of imposing the increment, it would rather implement the second quarter increases. Before we speak to Sam Fletcher, who is the communications director of the Volta River Authority, let's listen to Nanaya Jantwa earlier on today.
The Public Utilities Regulatory Commission, after deliberations on implementation of the third quarter automatic adjustment formula, has arrived at an adjustment figure of 31.56% for electricity and 14.30% for water. However, the Commission has decided not to pass on the current increase, but to implement the second quarter tariff of 12.09% for electricity and 6.1% for water, which was deferred. The increase takes effect from 1st July 2014.
Well, Sam Fletcher is the communications director for the Volta River Authority, and he joins us on the phone lines here on today's big story. Sam, good evening, and thank you very much for joining us on today's big story.
Good evening.
Now, should we be happy, I mean, per the announcement by the PRC that, look, it's not going to look at, it's rather going to, go back to, as it were, ensure that it wouldn't go to the agreement which they reached for the second quarter of the year, but rather we're looking at a situation where consumers would have to pay 12.1% for electricity and 6.1% for water. Should we be excited?
I don't get you, but it depends on who is looking at what from which perspective. But we as providers, I can say that it's a welcoming news. It would have been great if we had had this announcement of 12.09% some 3 months ago. Yet, better late than never. I think that if you ask me, the hope is that the third quarter, the calculation that was done for the third quarter, well, hoping that the service will get even better sooner. That 31% will also be implemented at the right time. But yes, it's a welcoming news, I should say.
But what about the explanation that as a result of the load shedding exercise, the PRC decided at a meeting that, look, we should rather go for the 12.1 for electricity and 6.1 for water. What does that change, really?
Look, I mean, for me, the essence of the automatic tariff adjustment formula is to have incremental, or if you like, incremental adjustment of small percentages. One of the reasoning behind it is that it is better than waiting for a year or two to slam consumers with about 80 to 100% increase. So I know that beginning of the year there was an incremental adjustment. I've forgotten the percentage figure, but also quite small. And now we have 12 point something percent. That for me is good, because then we are really following what we had agreed. I mean, given some of the things we encountered during the last tariff adjustment campaign, it was agreed that whatever it is, difficult as it may be, we should try and implement the automatic tariff adjustment formula. For me, there have been hitches, and PURC has given good reasons why the last quarter one was announced but not implemented. Now it has been. I think that there have been hitches, but overall it's progressing, and I'm hoping that it will get to a point where it will be really automatic and not controlled.
Meaning you have issues there. I mean, what kind of hitches are you talking about here, and how best can it be resolved?
Sorry?
You mentioned that there are hitches as far as the smooth implementation of the automatic adjustment formula is concerned. What are those hitches?
One of the main hitches is because of the load shedding exercise we are going through. I think we have to be sensitive to the plight of consumers, and at some point put ourselves in their shoes and feel for them. We know that the utilities themselves also need the tariffs very badly. But yes, we are working together, and without the consumer, the utilities don't have a business. So therefore, we have to be reasonable and find a common ground to agree.
But what about those who would argue that consistency matters here? I mean, we're talking about the implementation of the automatic adjustment formula, the fact that it would have to be tempered with because of these hitches. What do you say to that?
It does. Consistency really matters, and I don't think I have disagreed with that. What I said earlier on was that it would be great if it can, be really, really automatic without any breaks on. However, we need to look at a few other factors that come into play, and where we have to really make an adjustment to make everybody happy. We should do that.
Now, let's look at confidence of investors in the energy sector. The fact that we are not seeing a smooth implementation of the AAF, the automatic adjustment formula, is that likely to affect investor confidence in the energy sector in any way?
I think what will affect investor confidence is not necessarily tariff adjustment. I think what will affect investor confidence is the availability and affordability of electricity in the country. But more especially whether the megawatts are available, whether power is available for business. I think that businesses are willing to pay for electricity if they can have it. So the most important thing for us, as far as investment is concerned, is to make sure that power is available in this country. I personally don't think that companies are not willing to pay for power if it will help them run their businesses profitably.
Now, looking at the next quarter of the year, are we likely to see a situation where, I mean, your service delivery is going to get better, and for that matter, the automatic adjustment formula will not be tempered with us in this case?
That's what we are all hoping for, and very much so, given what we know. We are in the third quarter, or we are starting the third quarter very soon, and we know that by the end of by the end of July, thereabout, things will begin to improve. In fact, we're expecting today and tomorrow, we're expecting even one of our units in Abuazi to come on stream. I mean, things are starting very soon to get better. And it is our hope that within that quarter, things will even get better. And obviously, I know that the PURC, when things are better, they're also willing to implement the formula.
Thank you very much, Sam Fletcher, for talking to us here on today's Big Story. He's the Communications Director for the Volta River Authority. When we come back from the break, we will be speaking to the Young Patriot. Now, they've been advocating for the fact that the PRC need to really intercede on behalf of the consumers. They seem to be having some questions. They've been raising some questions as far as the new utility tariff hikes are concerned. We'll hear from them when we come back shortly. Well, this is still today's big story. Joining us in the studio right now to continue this discussion as per the new revelations as far as the PRC is concerned. I mean, you need to know that 12.1% increment for electricity and 6.1% for water. Richard Nyama is with the Young Patriot, and they've been doing a lot of advocacy as far as getting the PRC to really stand for the consumer is concerned. Richard, thank you very much for joining us on today's big story. What do you make of this new tariff hike?
It shouldn't have happened in the first place, and it's unacceptable. In September 2013, we had between 50 to 72% increments amongst the various utility providers, and it took a lot of tussling, boardroom wranglings and discussions with the PURC. I happened to be in one of the tripartite meetings when David Asaga then was the chairman. And it was agreed across board that performance should be related to the amounts of money.
And so what's your point, that we don't need the automatic adjustment formula?
No, the automatic adjustment formula works when you are increasingly also producing and improving services. Why should I pay for a service that is non-existent?
But there are challenges, and the utility service providers have mentioned them. It's clear to everyone.
You know what? These challenges were there, and I don't know if we can get 1 minute to go through what the PURC itself, it set itself this on the 30th of September 2013. And I'm quoting them. It is the strong view of the Commission that an increase in tariffs should correspond to an improvement in quality service. And the Commission would ensure that key benchmarks for attainment of the acceptable levels of quality service are strictly adhered to. And then they give you the benchmarks. 1, commercial losses should not exceed 21% of distribution companies. The Electricity Company of Ghana and Northern Electricity Distribution Company. Number 2, the ECG should develop an efficient billing and revenue collection effort to meet the regulatory benchmark of 95% collection ratio and address challenges associated with prepaid meters being used by consumers. 3, the Commission also wants the Ghana Grid Company Limited, that is GridCo, to limit its transmission losses to 3.5%.
And so what's your point?
While the Volta River Authority is to ensure generation plant availability of 92% for thermal plants and 95% for hydro plants.
So what's the point?
Just this last point.
Right.
What is the availability of hydro today? Is shut down. We are being told VRA is also going to run out of water. They are now telling you T3 will come on board. If it will come on board, it means it's shut down. Virtually everything is shut down. And I'm here to pay. I'm supposed to be paying for something that is shut down.
So why would you fault the PRC when it agrees with you in principle that, look, as a result of the load shedding exercise, we're going to temper with the automatic adjustment formula. We're not going to apply the agreement that they made in the second quarter of the year, but rather move to, the agreement they made in the third quarter of the year, but rather go for what they had refused to implement in the second quarter of the year.
Unfortunately, Prince, I'm not going to fall for this gimmick from the PURC. PURC is simply telling me that they have they originally brought 31% for them to accept, and they have negotiated it down to 12%, and then from 12% for water to 6%, and I'm supposed to accept it. I am saying that I am paying for a service that is not available. Number two, the indebtedness of the government. It states here that they should improve their metering to ensure that their collection ratio is high. The government offices are all wasting electricity. You have indicated that you are going to meter them. This is yet to be done. Government owes VRA over $400 million. You are not collecting that money, and you are squeezing the little we have from us. But you know what?
I want you to hold on to that thought. Let me just bring in Rasamu. He is the Deputy Communications Manager for the Energy Ministry. He's on the line with us here on today's big story. Rasamu Amewodo, thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah, the name is Amewodo.
Very well. Thanks for the correction.
Deputy Head of Communications.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for joining us on today's big story. So what's the justification, as far as the PRC is concerned, in tampering with the automatic adjustment formula? I mean, looking at the reasons that they've given, for which we've had the situation where consumers will pay 12.1% for electricity and 6.1% for water.
Well, I think that question should be directed to PRC to give us the justification. But from my point of view, I realize that they're trying to ensure that the increment does not affect the very poor, and so they're giving some pushing to the people who will be affected. That's how I see it. But I think they should be asked to provide a justification for it. Because PRC is supposed to be autonomous and to handle this issue.
But how does government see this? Because there are those who would argue that, look, if you tamper with the automatic adjustment formula, you're not being consistent, and that is likely to affect investor confidence, for that matter, in the energy sector.
Well, that's, you know, when you're doing anything, you have to take into consideration those who will be affected, and you have to ensure that they are not unnecessarily burdened. And I think that's why the PRC is trying to that's the way it's taken, to ensure that the consumers are not overly burdened, considering the situation in which we all find ourselves. We all understand that we are currently having some challenges in the economy, and life is not very well for a lot of people. So the PRC may be looking to pushing the poor, and for that matter, when they roll over all the instruments, it will affect them.
But Ras, where lies the point you make about cushioning the poor, when we know very well that the inability of the PRC to implement the agreement on the tariff hike for the second quarter of the year is going to be pushed on to another quarter of the year, perhaps added to the fourth quarter of the year? Where lies the justification in cushioning, the poor?
Well, I think from the PRC statement, they consider the current situation. Probably by the fourth quarter of the year, when things are better, it will be easier to get that thing done than now. Taking into consideration the current situation, and that simply informed their decision. But
are things going to get better? Tell us, give us hope. Because Richard Nyama here in the studio with us insists that the services, as far as the utility service providers are concerned, have not improved, and so he wasn't expecting any increment of a sort.
Well, I can assure you that things are going to get better. That's one I can assure you. And we are currently in this situation because of certain things that have not been done in the past. And since we are not facing and biting the bullet and receiving the blow, we agree that the situation is not favorable to all of us. And for that matter, we are all going through some very serious challenges as far as our living conditions and the economy and everything concerned. So I believe that things are going to get better in the course of the year, and we will be able to pay whatever instrument the PRC might do.
Finally, before I let you go, give us specifics. When are we likely to see an end to the load shedding exercise? When you say that things are going to improve?
We have been there before. We when it comes to engineering work, for instance, the last time a plant was supposed to come into operation, due to some technical challenges, it didn't happen. The minister had to rush there to see things for himself, and then we are working on it. And so when it comes to giving, deadlines or giving specific periods for things that engine machines, I cannot put my head on the line, because we've been there before. We've given dates, then it has to shift, and it's not going well for us.
Okay.
And so I can say that in the coming days, in the coming weeks, things will normalize and things will improve. In fact, we are working seriously behind the scenes. The minister is so much on the ground, very well, trying to ensure that we are out of the woods as soon as possible.
Very well, Rasa Menawode. Thank you very much for joining us on today's big story. You heard Rasa Menawode, the deputy, external communications manager for the energy ministry. Really, does it give you any hope that, look, we're going to see a situation where utility service providers would improve their services, and for which reason there will be justification in seeing that there's hike as far as utility tariffs are concerned?
If anything, he just dimmed my hopes. He said that he cannot tell, and so he's not going to put his head on the line. Look, we just had the statistical board just came up with the development figures today, and it is very bad. GDP ratio for the first quarter is down from 9% to 6.7% this year. In actual fact, the industry sector is supposed to have grown by negative 1.1%, and manufacturing in particular negative 19.3%. And you know the reason that the statistical board has given? But their point is the fact that the utility providers are not giving those services, and so the economy is suffering. There lies the solution. If you want this economy to grow, if you want me to be able to pay for more, you have to produce more. When I'm paying for a service that does not exist, there's no justification. But you know what? We Ghanaians to a large extent deserve this. We have this Diwufie Asem attitude, Farmer Nyami attitude. So when there is the need for mass action and the various NGOs and pressure groups put themselves together to ensure that PURC falls in line and that we actually getting value for money, people will sit in their cars and their windows and look over and wave at you, but expect results. If we do not, as a country, together put pressure on the officers of the PURC, on the ministry, on the GRIDCO, VRA, we will not get anywhere.
Okay, finally, before I let you go, exactly what would you want to see the PRC do in as much as we go on implementing the automatic adjustment formula? Give us point by point what specifically you want the PRC to do.
They have, they gave that themselves. 95% collection ratio, 92% terminal plan, 95% hydro availability. They should stick to this. When that is there, they should come back to us and we'll talk.
Very well. Thank you very much, Richard Nyama. He's with the Young Patriot speaking to us here on today's big story. And certainly this discussion will go on for some time now. And obviously we'll get other reactions for you. But that'll be it for now. Coming up shortly is Marian Ture with the interactive segment. Stay tuned.